Ladies and gentlemen, capital G back at it here with Minsc, beloved ranger, and his little friend Boo. I love this commander. This is one of my most recent decks that I've built in paper. However, the deck that I'm presenting is not exactly what I'm playing. Mostly, but not exactly. The reason for this is because I want to highlight several strategies you can take with Minsc, because this mana commander is in fact very powerful and very open-ended. So let's have a deeper dive. But before we do, just want to mention I have two Boo tokens. I have the regular foily Boo token that is going to go for the eyes, so be careful, watch your eyes. And I also have this little custom-made one from featuring a character from an old PC game. So, for funsies, leave the comments below if you know the name of the character and what game he's from. Boo, of course, I should probably highlight, is a legendary hamster. And it has trample and haste. So, you cast Minsc, he enters the battlefield, brings a Boo token with him. And of course the X ability reads, pay X until end of turn, target creature you control has base, power and toughness XX and becomes a giant in its addition to its other types. You can only activate Minsc's ability at sorcery speed, probably for the best, because there's it's a very open-ended ability, as I've been saying. So on the surface, it looks like your goal is to make Boo a humongous giant space hamster and attack. And yes, there's a little bit of that in here, but there's so many other strategies we can go with. Minsc can target himself with the ability, so you can totally go Voltron and make him a base like 18/18 and go for the commander damage. You can play threaten.deck, steal your opponent's creatures, and then once you're finished with them, use the ability to make them 0/0s. Yes, X can be 0. I've also found some pretty cool combo potential too, and I've also seen this deck played as a poison theme. So you make Boo poisonous, or you give him infect, make him, a 12, just a 12/12, and swing in that way. So many strategies that we're going to be highlighting in here. I also put some pod synergies, believe it or not, in here. I'm not one for the pod strategies, but I did have an extra birthing pod that I wasn't really using anywhere else, so in here it goes. Birthing pod, of course, means that we can sacrifice a creature and search our library for a creature card with mana costs equal to 1 plus the sacrificed creature's mana cost, or mana value as it is now known as, and put it onto the battlefield. This can only be done at sorcery speed, but because the green mana in Birthing Pod is Phyrexian, we can pay life rather than pay mana for both casting and activating. Also run a grafted exoskeleton to ideally give Boo infect. And whenever the exoskeleton becomes unattached from a permanent, sacrifice that permanent. Well, Boo's just a little token that comes in whenever we cast our commander. So, as much as I attached and I absolutely love Boo, I'm sad to see him go, but he's expendable. Soul Ring, of course, because we do want to ramp up. And that's it for artifacts. We're going very light on artifacts in this deck. Creatures, another strategy, of course, is mutate. We cannot mutate onto Minsc, but we can definitely mutate onto Boo. So we're going to start with the Auspicious Starix. It's a 5 mana 6/6, so just a big dumb beater that's slightly ahead of the curve. But we can mutate it for 6. It's rare that the mutate is more expensive than the casting cost of the creature. But it says here that whenever this creature mutates, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile X permanent cards, where X is the number of times this creature is mutated. So you mutate onto Boo, you turn Boo from a 1/1 to a 6/6. And you get the next permanent off your library? Sure. Running the birds for the ramp. Bygone Bishop, we do have a few creatures that cost mana value 3 or less. So this will allow us to investigate, get some clues, turn those clues into cards. Captivating Crew. Again, we're playing threaten.deck strategies here. So 4 mana for this 4/3, and 4 mana to gain control of a creature an opponent controls until end of turn. It gains haste. We can only do this at sorcery speed, but if we're allowed to keep Captivating Crew and Minsc on the battlefield, our opponents will not be allowed to keep their creatures. Cloudpiercer is another mutate creature. This one mutates for only 4 mana, a red and 3 generic. It would grant reach, and whenever a creature mutates, you can discard a card to draw a card. Dawnbringer Cleric is just a great toolbox card. A 1/3 for 2 mana, but when this enters the battlefield, we can gain 2 life, destroy an enchantment, or exile a card from a graveyard. Never underestimate, like the first ability we're not really using. The second and third ones, enchantments just get more and more popular as time goes by, and graveyard strategies are super popular. If you see a gray merchant in a graveyard, exile it. Trust me. Druid of the Anima, one of my favorite mana dorks in Naya colors. 2 mana for this 1/1 that can tap for any of the colors that we need. Drum Hunter. 3 of your end step, if you control a creature of power 5 or greater, you may draw a card. So this gives us a little bit of card draw, and it can wrap us up a little bit. Enlightened Aesthetic just simply destroys an enchantment. Fierce Empath. When this enters the battlefield, we can search our library for a creature card with mana cost 6 or greater and put it into our hand. There's a very important one that's going to be coming up soon. Running the Gem Razor. When this mutates, we can destroy an artifact or enchantment, and it grants reach and trample to the creature that mutates. Insolent Neonate seems like a very odd add here, but you'll see why shortly. 1 red for this 1/1 with Menace, and we can discard a card and sacrifice the Neonate to draw a card. Karmic Guide. Now things might be starting to get a little suspicious. So double white and 3 for this 2/2 flyer with protection from lack. It has an echo cost. We don't care about the echo cost. When this enters the battlefield, we may return a creature card from our graveyard to the battlefield. So even if we don't hit our combo, because yes, we do have a combo, we can get some recursion out of this. Luminate Primordial basically swords a creature from each opponent's board. Also gives us a big 4/7 creature with vigilance. Mog Fanatic, another little oddball add here. We can, it's 1 red for this 1/1, then we can sacrifice it to deal 1 damage to a creature or a player. Molten Primordial. Again, some threaten.deck strategies. Double red and 5 for this 6/4 with haste. And when this enters the battlefield, for each opponent, we get to take control of one of their creatures until the end of the turn. Those creatures untap and gain haste. And then, with Minsc on the battlefield, we'll turn them into 0/0s when we're done. Paradise Druid, just another mana dork. Has hexproof when she's untapped, but can tap for any of our colors when we need it. Plundering Barbarian, one of my favorite commons from Forgotten Realms, because this can come in and destroy an artifact or create a treasure. I like it more for the create a treasure, but if we want to bust up somebody's Soul Ring early game, we totally can. Prosperous Innkeeper also comes in with a treasure, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield under our control, we gain a life. So it gives us a little bit of durability as well as that one-shot ramp. Here we are, Protean Hulk. Veterans of the format know it and love it. For people who are fairly new and don't know the combo potential of this card just yet, green, green, and 5 for this 6/6 beast, and it says that whenever it dies, you may search your library for any number of creature cards with total converted mana cost 6 or less. Put them onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. So the combo here, of course, with our commander in play, we can cast our Protean Hulk, turn it into a 0/0. We can go get our Karmic Guide, and we can go get our Mog Fanatic that we've already shown off. Karmic Guide can bring the Protean Hulk back. We turn it into a 0/0 a second time to go get the other half of the combo. And that will be Reviarch. When Reviar comes onto the battlefield, well, it doesn't do anything, but whenever it dies, return up to 2 target creature cards with power 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. What 2 creatures are we going to be bringing back with the Reviarch? Ideally, Karmic Guide and Mog Fanatic. So the cycle goes. We zero out Reviarch. It dies, brings the Karmic Guide and the Mog Fanatic back onto the battlefield because they both have power 2 or less. Sacrifice the Mog Fanatic to deal the damage. Karmic Guide's ETB brings Reviarch back onto the battlefield. And then we just keep zero them out and cycle them infinitely until our opponents have been pinged to death. That's the game plan. That's the ultimate game plan. Now, I'm not running a bunch of tutors to force this combo into existence, but it is in here as a win con. Going back to some creatures that we had skipped in demonstrating this combination. Protector of the Crown. We're playing some creatures that give us the Monarchy so we can get some cards. In the case of Protector of the Crown, when it enters the battlefield, we become the Monarch, and all damage that would be dealt to us is dealt to Protector of the Crown instead. So this can actually absorb a full hit for us. Regal Behemoth also gives us the Monarchy when it enters the battlefield. It's a 5/5 trample. And whenever you tap a life for mana while you're the Monarch, add 1 mana of any color to our mana pool. So this can really ramp us up if our opponents cannot take the Monarchy from us. Running Steve, of course, to go get a basic. The Skyline Despot is the last of the cards that gets us the Monarchy. 7 mana for this 5/5 Flying Dragon. When it enters the battlefield, of course, we become the Monarch. And at the beginning of our upkeep, we get a 5/5 Dragon token, if we are the Monarch. So if our opponents can't take the Monarchy, we just get more and more flying power on the board. Running Soul of the Harvest to draw some cards, a 6/6 trample for 6, that whenever another non-token creature enters the battlefield under our control, we can draw a card. Sunblast Angel. Let's say our opponents do try to lash out at us. We can cast this and destroy all of the tapped creatures. And Tornado Elemental. We don't actually have a lot of flyers in the deck, just the Skyline Despot, really. So Tornado Elemental will take care of all of our opponent's flyers fairly easily, while giving us a creature that can't be blocked. So if we have a bunch of mana, we can actually turn Tornado Elemental from a 6/6 to something larger if that means knocking one of our opponents out, blockers or no blockers. A few enchantments, including Colossification, because it is absolutely hilarious to put this on Boo. Or any of our creatures really, but Boo especially. Making Boo +20/+20, and the cool thing about this is Boo's base power toughness is 1/1. We can change it to something bigger with Minsc. So let's say we untap. We're going to have at least 7 mana available to us, maybe 8. So we can actually raise Boo's base power and toughness by tapping out and swinging in with, say, 28 power, 29 power. Easy. If this is not answered, it dominates the board. Dictative Karametra. This is a good way for us to ramp. The fact that it has flash is the reason I chose to run this over, say, Heartbeat of Spring or even Mana Flare. Whenever a player taps on for mana, that player adds 1 mana of that type to their mana pool. Pretty sweet. The fact that we can flash this in when we are ready, because that's the first use of it. Elemental Bond. Whenever a creature power 3 or greater enters the battlefield under our control, such as our commander, we get to draw a card. Fecundity. Whenever a creature dies, its controller may draw a card. So a little group huggy at first, but remember, we are playing threatened.deck. We can threaten our opponent's creatures, gain control of them, swing, and then zero them out, and we draw the card, not them. Goblin Bombardment is sort of a backup sack outlet. If for whatever reason we can't keep Minsc on the battlefield, at least we can have this to sacrifice creatures to. Outpost Siege. When this enters the battlefield, choose Khans or Dragons. Both modes are useful in the deck, by the way. So Khan says at the beginning of our upkeep, exile the top card of our library, and we may play that card this turn. Dragons says whenever a creature we control leaves the battlefield, deal 1 damage to any target. So if we're actually ready to combo off, we'll choose dragons. Most of the time we'll choose cons to get the card advantage. Pattern of Rebirth. This is an excellent tutor in this deck. Our commander is essentially a sack outlet. So we can throw this on a Boo, sacrifice Boo for the cause, and go get our Protean Hulk. Runes of the Deus. This is here as part of the Voltron example. We could throw this onto Minsc to give it +2/+2 trample and double strike. And then, of course, Minsc can then spend any extra mana that he's got to change his base power and toughness from 3/3 to something bigger. Over to instants, Dawn Charm is a pretty sneaky piece. 2 mana for this instant that can prevent all combat damage this turn, regenerate a creature, or counter a spell that targets you. So a nice little toolboxy instant. Can do any of those amazing things for us when we need it. Divergent transformations. Here's a little interesting pod piece. So the nice thing about Minsc and Boo is that Minsc is fairly cheap, brings Boo with him. So we have 2 ways that we can play this card. One is that we can use it to exile our opponent's biggest things and hope they get something a little less powerful on the board as a result. Or we could target Minsc and Boo and go get the next two creatures from the top of our library. And this will be done at instant speed too, so we can respond to removal this way. Bolt. The other day I bolted the other day Lightning Bolt was what won me the game. Was playing against a Hapatra deck, and she was trying to minus out one of my creatures. Bolted her before she can finish off the Bygone Bishop. In fact, it was Bygone Bishop. Already had 2 minus counters on it. Bolted her, so I would not get a 3rd counter. And then threw a Colossification on it, and it ended up surviving the rest of the game. Drawing me a bunch of cards, and while flying over my opponent's blockers. So, Lightning Bolt was a game winner for me last time I ran this deck. Road to Ruin. This is cool. At instant speed, search our library for a basic and put it on the battlefield. And has a cool aftermath ability called Ruin. Red, and 1 for a sorcery. We can cast it only from our graveyard. And we get to deal damage to target creature equal to the number of lands we control. So this actually scales very nicely in the game and can shoot down something huge from our graveyard. Synergies Shelter is a double-faced card. It is a non-basic land on the back that enters the battlefield tapped. But the front side is also useful. For 2 mana, we can have target creature we control gaining protection from the color of our choice until end of turn. So this could protect one of our creatures, and if we really don't need it, or we just draw this too early for us to be useful, play it as a land. Swords, of course. Exile an opponent's creature. Unexpected Windfall. I like this card. Double red and 2. Instant speed. Yes, it may seem expensive for the Tormenting Voice effect of, discarding a card to draw 2 at 4 mana. Even at instant speed, it's a high price. But we also get 2 treasure tokens. So this can really ramp us up. And that's why I think it's worth running the card. Going into our lands, we're running all of the pathways. We are running the check lands, of course. Command Tower. The Cragtown Pathway. Evolving Wilds, running the full Evolving Wilds, Timorphic Expanse, Fabled Passage trio. 6 forests, a jungle shrine, Mosswort Bridge. We're running all 3 hideaway lands because it is fairly easy in this deck to meet the conditions to cast whatever cards we exile with the hideaway lands. So in the case of Mosswort Bridge, as long as creatures we control have total power 10 or greater, we can cast the card for free. 6 mountains, there's the Needle Verge Pathway. 6 plains, Rootbound Crag, Sacred Foundry, running the Shocks, Spine Rock Knoll. We can play the exiled card without paying its mana cost if an opponent was dealt 7 or more damage this turn. Stomping Ground, Sunpetal Grove, Temple Garden. There's the Terramorphic Expanse we mentioned previously. Windbreast Kite says if we attack with at least 3 or more creatures, we can cast the card that's under it for free. I mean, you cast Minsc, brings Boo, that's already 2. Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth, so I decided I'm going to try it in here. Each land is a forest in addition to its other land types. I think this works great with the Fabled Passage, Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic Expanse combo. Because if you got Yavimaya out early, and then you draw those lands later, they tap for mana right away. Something that's not normally the case. Some sorceries, including the Galloped Recovery, which of course can be played tapped as a land instead. Citywide Bust is a great wipe. Destroy all creatures with toughness 4 or greater. Most of our creatures, at least in the early going, don't have a high toughness, so we can wipe some larger things off the board in the early game. Clan Defiance. Dump a bunch of mana into the X to shoot down a flyer, shoot down something without flying, and shoot a player or a planeswalker. As you've noticed, we are only running 3 artifacts, which means Creeping Corrosion, destroy all artifacts. Eldritch Evolution, that's another pod card. Sacrifice a creature, go get another creature with mana value as much as 2 higher. So X, so we can go get an X or less, so any creature. So let's say we sacrifice Minsc. We can go get a 5-drop. Or less, depending on what we need. Farseek, go get a Plains, Island, Swamp, or Mountain card, put it onto the battlefield tapped. That includes our shocks, of course. Life's Legacy. Here's a cool one-shot card draw spell. We can in concept make Boo an 8/8 and spend 2 to attack him and draw 8 cards. We can totally do that. Mass Mutiny. This gets us a creature from each opponent that we can swing with. We can zero them out after we're done. Cool card for this build. Rampant Growth to go get another basic. Regrowth gets another card from our graveyard back to our hand. Shamanic Revelation draws us a card for each creature we control. And if they happen to have at least 4 power, each creature with power 4 or greater gets us 4 life. Shadowstorm, another way to wipe out all of the artifacts. Because, again, we're only running 3. We don't need any of them to win the game. Songmad Treachery. This is another card that can be played as a land if we draw it too early, or we can use it to threaten a single creature. Swallow Whole. I think it's just really, really funny to tap Boo to literally eat one of our opponent's creatures alive. 3 visits goes to get us a forest card that we can put onto the battlefield, again including our shocks. And Tooth and Nail, old school finisher. We don't see this as much as we used to, but if we get to 9, we can go get our combo pieces and put them onto the battlefield right away and win the game on the spot. Also running Vandal Blast. We're really hating on the artifacts here because there's no consequence to us for doing so. And that is Minsc, Beloved Ranger. You can, again, a deck that you can take in many directions. You can go pure Voltron. You can go full on with the theme and make a humongous Boo by ramping, tripling your mana, and then attack with a 60/60 Boo. There's so many cool things you can do with Minsc. I've loved experimenting with this commander so far. And I hope you all get the opportunity to play with him. And on that, I am going to get going, and we will see you next time. I believe Nyambi will be up next. We'll see you then.